Hi guys! In this episode of Blamey's Thought Zone, I am really excited to be sharing my thoughts to the 4th episode of the 8th and final season of one of my favorite shows ever, Fear the Walking Dead. This episode, episode 4, King County. I honestly don't even know where to begin with my thoughts for this episode. I have so much to say about this episode. Straight up one of my favorite episodes of the Walking Dead universe, period. In many ways, it felt as impactful to Morgan's development as a character as episode 1 of season 6 did. Like, it had a lot of the same kind of vibes as that episode. Although I wouldn't say it was quite as exciting as the first episode of season 6, but in many ways, it was just as impactful, at the very least. But man, I have so much to say about this episode. It's, first of all, really funny that this episode is an episode of the final season of Fear the Walking Dead, not the main show's final season. Because, one, not only should it be because Morgan is a main show character that hijacked Fear the Walking Dead, and honestly, again, to sidetrack it even further, it's really annoying how we've barely seen any OG Fear characters in the final season of Fear the Walking Dead. Like, we haven't seen Strand, Luciana is fucking nowhere, Daniel has shown a couple of times, but even he's barely in the episodes. And the rest are all new characters from New Fear after the reboot. Like, we barely have anybody who is still alive from OG Fear showing up. Like, are you fucking serious? But again, that's a sidetrack. So let's go a little bit further back. So not only is Morgan a main show character, so it just feels something you should do in the main show, especially with him being part of the first episode of the main show, but this is the kind of shit that I was hoping that we would get in the final season of the main show. I'm not saying this is better than the episodes that we got in the final season of the main show. I just think it's more of what I was looking for. Because for a final season of a show, even a show like The Walking Dead, which is a show that is not really meant to have really much of an ending, I still feel like, at least on a character level, you should have had some kind of wrapping up of character storylines and character development in the final season and do some kind of like bookends. Even if you were planning to do spin-offs with certain characters, you still should have like finished off with in some kind of like character bookends. As if you want to, you don't have to watch the spin-offs, you can just finish this. But obviously they were never gonna do that. But I was still hoping for at least bookend finishing of character development for the characters that are not gonna get their spin-offs, like Aaron or Gabriel or Jerry, you know? Like, get some actual like focus and screen time and development for those kind of characters. This is what I was imagining, a bookend, something that the character has always been striving towards and finally gets to have. Like, for example, let's say Carol having a child that she can take care of without having to worry about them dying. That would have been a satisfying bookend. Or at least that's the kind of bookend kind of thing that I was looking forward to in the final season. But we didn't really get that in the final season. We just got another season, just like any other. And it was fine, but it's not what I was looking forward to for a final season. It's really annoying, man. The showrunners of Fear the Walking Dead are so good at appealing to my tastes in terms of the exact kind of storytelling that I really enjoy, but they suck at actually executing it properly. That said, this was still a really entertaining episode, and definitely my favorite episode of the season so far, and the best episode for me since the season 7 premiere, I would say, because I really enjoyed that one. And there's some other episodes in season 7 that I think were pretty entertaining, but this is definitely the best episode since that. And that is even including episode 2 of this season, which, like I said, I really enjoyed a lot. But to me, episode 2 of this season falls more in line of and those kind of other episodes from season 7 that I enjoyed a lot, but that still had some flaws, like episode 3 of season 7 or episode 9 of season 7. Like, those were really enjoyable, but I wouldn't call them as good as season 7 episode 1 or this episode. And yeah, before we just get into specifically the details of this episode that I really, really enjoyed, I just want to explain and describe how much I love this episode. It was great, man. It's awesome. It was so cool to go back to this iconic location of King County and Morgan's home. And yeah, people have and will nitpick the fact that it's obviously not the same house. It doesn't look quite the same. It looks different. Like if you put a picture, if you put 2 pictures of the house from the main show and this house, it looks different, clearly. It's a smaller house. And there's other details that don't quite fit with the main show. And even that bothers me as well a little bit. Because, like, I remember after watching, like, the trailer for the season, where we got shots of Morgan, Mo, and Grace in the house, people were, like, already visually comparing them to shots from the main show. And the house, even on the inside, is clearly kind of different, but I like the intention enough to overlook those details. Like, is it a perfect episode? Fucking no. There's a lot of nitpicky things like that, but I acknowledge that it's a nitpick. I acknowledge that they obviously couldn't use the exact same location as they did all those years ago. It was not feasible. So the fact that they still went out of their way to make it pretty close is fine by me. Criticisms that about that people seem to have also are so fucking frustrating, because it's not criticisms like that. Like, people don't complain, oh, the house has a different shape or it's smaller. Like, I've seen some criticisms like that, but by and large, most criticisms are about stupid bullshit that nobody in the audience was fucking aware of or knew or learned. Like, people talking about the fact that the gun apparently was not supposed to be in the house because back in, like, season 3, when Rick met with Morgan again, the gun was with him and he was not at the house. He was in, like, an apartment building or whatever. So it doesn't make any sense for that gun to be back in the house. Or some stupid detail about, or people complaining about some stupid detail not being exactly the same when Morgan explains what happened all those years ago with his son and how exactly he died. Like, apparently in the main show, he talked about how he told Dwayne to stay in the kitchen or something, or I even, like, see, I can't even remember the exact detail, which one was how he explained it in this episode and which one was how he was explaining it in the main show, but apparently he told Dwayne to either sit in the kitchen or sit outside, and then a walker came and attacked him. Like, that detail about whether he's in the kitchen or not is apparently different from the main show to Fear the Walking Dead. And it's such a stupid thing to get hung up on. Like, I can understand getting hung up on the fact that the house on the inside has a little bit of a different shape compared to the main show. But to get hung up on this random little detail that nobody fucking remembers is so stupid. Especially because it could easily be explained by just faulty memory. Like, think back to your period of time where you were traumatized by an event in your life. Do you remember it the exact same way always? Like, do you remember all the details perfectly? Or do you happen to sometimes maybe kind of change the detail unintentionally when you're telling the story? It's like, it makes sense that over time he will forget about it. It's been 10 years for him, dude. Like, it's such a dumb thing to kind of get hung up on. Especially because in this episode, we are essentially shown that Morgan is a little bit of an unreliable narrator when it comes to the events that happened all those years ago. So it's just like, you can't, especially because of that, especially you can't complain really about some details being different about that. Because apparently people say that his house that he was staying at burned down, When the fuck did we learn that information in the main show? Maybe we learned in like one off sentence or some kind of information, but it's never really been like Morgan, let's say Morgan talking to Rick and saying, oh yeah, that house burned down. Like, it was never an information that was like conveyed to the audience directly and undisputably, so it's such a dumb thing to kind of get hung up on. So of so many things that you can get hung up on, that's the thing that you get hung up on? Really? But yeah, as usual, we can't have a Fear the Walking Dead review without kind of criticizing the dumb ways the fans complain about it. It's like, if you watch my reviews, you can see how much I'm complaining about the show as well. But I'm complaining about things that deserve to get complained about, and not stupid bullshit that doesn't matter. But yeah, right off the bat, you can see this episode being really good though. First opening shot, Morgan arriving at King County. Like, right off the bat, it just felt like it was going to be an iconic and memorable and cool episode, and I really, really liked it. And it honestly, genuinely kind of felt like an episode from the main show, and I think one of the reasons why is because it had a little bit of a comic book backstory to it, because certain aspects of what happens to Dwayne is apparently taken from the comic book, which I actually didn't know until people mentioned it in comments of videos. So that's kind of cool. But I love how even the opening shot is so iconic and everything. But the second where I really felt like this episode was clearly going to be really, really good was when, after Morgan arrives in King County, it is unable to go in and put down Dwayne in the house that he got bit and was left, basically. Morgan runs away to a bunch of walkers who he ends up honestly brutally murdering in such a satisfying way, in a way that I feel like we haven't gotten in Fear the Walking Dead in a while. Like, we haven't gotten this satisfying walker murdering in a while. I really, really enjoy that. It's like, for a while, I felt like the Walking Dead universe in general, I feel like for whatever reason, has been just kind of being lazy when it comes to zombie kills and not really doing them in a way that is satisfying the way it used to be in the olden days. I feel like in the older seasons of both Fear the Walking Dead and the main show, it was far more satisfying the way the zombies were killed. Like, they were killed on the front, on the face, and you could clearly see it. Whereas in the main show and Fear the Walking Dead in later seasons, especially after the hate that the Walking Dead got with the brutality in the premiere of season 7, I feel like they really toned down the violence, even with walkers, to the point where stabbing of walkers and murdering of walkers was really kind of happening in a way where you couldn't really see it as clearly as we should have. But in this episode, the way he just murdered them was so satisfying and refreshing in a way that we haven't just seen in a while, and it was really, really good, and I really enjoyed that. And that's the moment I was like, yep, this was going to be a good episode. And after that, we have a really emotional a moment of Morgan screaming in pain that he can't do this, and he can't put down his son, and he doesn't know why. And that was really enjoyable. Then we have some stupid plot contrivances and some stupid bullshit with Dwight and Sherry being forced to go after Morgan once again. Because their kid got bit, if you remember 2 episodes ago, and the cure that Padre is giving him with radiation, because of that, Dwight and Sherry are forced to continue working for Padre again. And I know a lot of people are apparently frustrated about that in this episode, but at least in this case, it fucking makes sense. Like, people have complained about Dwight and Sherry essentially flip-flopping, because later on in the episode they end up switching back and deciding to fight against Padre again and take their son out of Padre or whatever once again. And people have complained about this flip-flopping, but honestly, it makes far more sense the way they do it in this episode than it did 2 episodes ago. Because in this episode, they are forced by Padre, who hurt their son and has the only thing keeping their son alive. They're forced because of that to go after Morgan. Like, it makes sense why they would be working with Padre, because they're forced to. Whereas before, they had 7 years to fucking escape with their son. But no, they just stayed because the plot demanded it. And even then, they still give Morgan the opportunity to escape and just kind of like trick Padre that he died, apparently, by doing the same kind of trick that was referenced in season 6 of Fear, where they just mess up a walker's face and pretend that that's him dead. Again, another reference to the main show's 6th season, when the main characters cut off a walker's head and pretended that it was Gregory's, because that's what the Saviors wanted off of him. It's a really cool reference that I really, really like, and kind of reminded me of how good season 6 of this show was as well, so that was nice. But yeah, even later on in the episode, when Dwight and Sherry decide to essentially kill the Padre guards that were with them looking for Morgan, people have complained, again, repeating this, that it basically has Dwight and Sherry flip-flopping, despite the fact that they know they are in the wrong. But the reason that they decide to switch and go after those guards is because those guards are ready to kill Morgan. They were okay with bringing him back to Padre, but not with killing him in cold blood, especially when he's clearly suffering because he's unable to put down his zombified son. So it makes sense why they end up switching once again. Again, their actions in this episode are far more logical than before. Yeah, it's frustrating that they constantly keep switching, but at least this switch makes sense, and the previous one didn't. What was very annoying, though, was them kind of bringing up the fact that it feels like the fucking Sanctuary once again, like they bring it up again. I swear, 50% of the lines that Dwight and Sherry have is just referencing Negan and the Saviors. Like, we get it. They did that in season 7, when they were taken by Strand, and they did this shit with Padre already. Like, we get it. Oh, bad guys are like the Saviors. Don't have to keep hammering it. We get it. But yeah, now that we're done with Dwight and Sherry, although I guess let's just also quickly talk about what happens to their son, who manages to knock out the bad guy of your season, which is just really funny to me. And manages to escape Padre and join them. He's apparently okay. It seems like the radiation has worked, although whether it has or it hasn't, you're gonna have to wait until my review for episode 5 to find out. He manages to knock her out and escape, and the way he just knocks her out, it does seem pretty badass, and I love that Dwight's kid is so capable, but it just kind of makes me think about the recap of, I believe it was season 4 of Fear the Walking Dead that Skybound did, and particularly the guy who did those recaps, because he's really funny, like Woody Tondorf or Tudorf or whatever his name is. He's really funny, and it just makes me think of the way he talked about the one of the villains in season 4, like Martha, I think was her name, and how he just laughed about at her with the way she just faints in one of the episodes. Like, that's what kind of pops into my head, and it's really, really funny. I can imagine how mocking he would be about season 8 of Fear the Walking Dead, even as good as it is. But yeah, getting back to Morgan, I love that he goes back to the house, and we obviously get references to that. We have some more Easter eggs with the writings on the wall and everything. And we have some, honestly, kind of exciting moments in the episode where he kind of brings up the fact that he thought that he didn't come back to this house after he put down his wife and wasn't able to put down his son. He doesn't remember coming back to this house. But apparently he did, because there's all this writing on the wall talking about, well, the typical stuff, like Clear, Dwayne died, Dwayne turned, and all those stuff. He apparently went back afterwards, but he doesn't remember that. And instantly, what props up in my mind after that is that there's a possibility that maybe Dwayne didn't die. and Morgan just forgot about it or something, because it's been a theory that since we didn't see Dwayne die, that maybe he is alive. As you know, in the Walking Dead universe, unless you see a body, a character probably survived. And honestly, in some cases, maybe even if you did see the body, they probably still survived, as we might find out in the second half of the season, because it clearly doesn't seem like it's gonna be in the first half. Although they might end up showing that character as a cliffhanger for the mid-season finale, which is episode 6. Honestly, I would not be shocked if they do that, but whatever. So yeah, that's kind of the thing that popped into my head, but that's obviously not what ended up happening. So after that, they ended up going to the house that Morgan was going to in the beginning of the episode, where apparently Dwayne was stuck, where he got bit. But when they go there and Morgan goes for the kill, it turns out that he wasn't there. Although Morgan's wife's body was there, which was honestly a really cool visual that we got to see. And throughout the episode, we also got glimpses of his wife and her just walking around like she did in season 1. I don't know whether they used the actress again, like they got the actress again to participate in the episode, or whether they just took that shot from season 1 and just used visual effects and reused it. I don't know whether they did that, which one of the two things, because The Walking Dead is honestly pretty good at reusing old shots for new purposes. Like, The Walking Dead is actually really good at visual effects. Because remember back in season 10 when Michonne was having that acid trip and she was imagining an alternative timeline where she had ended up with the Saviors, and the final shots where she gets killed by Rick is a shot that was just reused from season 2, and they just kind of edited older Rick with like the longer hair and everything and made it look very fucking convincing. So that was pretty cool. So it's possible that they could have just reused that shot, but I don't know. It was just still really cool, and how at the end he was actually managed to get through what was bothering him and shoot despite the fact that he was seeing her through the gun. And there's also the really, really cool scene when he doesn't find Dwayne's body, where he just kind of feels like depressed and just doesn't really give a shit about anything anymore, and the Padre guards point a gun at him, and he even grabs it and points it at his head because he just doesn't give a fuck about anything and he's ready to die. I really love that. It makes him seem really, really badass. There's one particular shot where he just has such a pouty face while looking in the distance that is just really, really funny. But by and large, it's a really sad and emotional scene, and all the actors honestly did a really good job there, with Grace's screaming, Morgan's just despair, and then Dwight and Sherry's badass attack onto the other Padre guards. That was pretty badass as well. And then afterwards, obviously, you have Morgan going to save Mo from a fire because she was stuck in the original house where Morgan stayed with Rick in season 1. She went to the ceiling, and guess who she found there? Dwayne, Morgan's son, chained up in the ceiling. Two things I want to say in regards to this. One, what is with Georgia and kids being stuck in a ceiling as zombies? Because Telltale's The Walking Dead did the same shit with a zombie kid in a ceiling. Because if you didn't know, this episode takes place in Georgia, the state. And two, this is a cool comic book reference, because apparently in the comic book, Morgan had chained up his son. I don't think he ended up putting him down, so that's not taken from the comic book, like him putting him down and saving another kid in the process. That's completely original, but the concept of Dwayne being still a zombie after all these years and him being chained up is taken from the comics. It's a reference to the comics, very much so. And honestly, that was like really, really cool to see. And the reaction that Morgan had when he realized I put him here, like that was honestly really, really good. And the music as well accompanying that scene was just so amazing. I really, really enjoyed that. It was so emotional and just cathartic and satisfying that we had this final completion for the character after all these years. And then we have the really weird ending of the episode, which feels really horror movie-esque and like very... It honestly even feels like very Friday the... Not... Was it Friday? No, it was Nightmare of Elm Street like, where you have the two characters like Morgan and Grace just talking, and then you have Mo in the background just kind of walking around with the camera weirdly kind of focusing on her and just putting her in such an point of view where it's kind of clear that something is going to happen in the background. And obviously, as she sits down and looks at the old album of Morgan with his family, a zombie jumps up from the ashes of the burned down house and attacks her, and that zombie ends up biting Grace, who is apparently now dying from radiation, by the way, as well. I didn't mention that, so there's that as well. But I love how clearly telegraphed it was that something was going to happen. I was even spoiled that there was going to be some kind of a jump scare. But even if I wasn't, I would have seen that from a mile away. This feels like such a horror movie ending scene that it was obvious that something was going to happen. But yeah, that was really, really cool. And now we have Grace, who is also in need of getting that treatment for with the radiation. Although whether it would actually work for her as much as it seems like it has worked for Finch, which, by the way, again, I don't know if I want to mention again, I don't know whether I like that it's working on him or not, because I don't want Dwight and Sherry to lose their kid, but also, again, I feel like it takes away the stakes of getting bitten. In a way that, even though it's basically the same concept as just, like, amputation, it just feels like it just feels more like it takes away the stakes than amputation does, you know? I guess because with amputation, you're still making like a big sacrifice. Like to amputate, it just still means that the character is gonna lose a body part. Whereas with the radiation, it's not quite as tangible of a sacrifice. Because you're still sacrificing your health and potentially years of your life down the line. But it's just still not quite as tangible as just losing your arm or losing your leg. I think that's my issue with that, you know? And considering that Grace already has suffered through a lot of radiation, both when she was running the power plant in Season 5 and also with the events of Season 7, it just doesn't quite necessarily feel like it's gonna work on her as much, but it is what it is. So yeah, all in all, really good episode, really good book, and honestly, this easily could have been the final episode with Morgan. This is definitely the one episode that is supposed to kind of wrap up his character. And considering even the events of the next episode, which I have seen, by the way, I just want to mention this, I've seen up to episode 5. It really feels like they're setting up to finish off his character in this first half of the season. Considering that we haven't seen a lot of the OG Fear characters, I feel like, and I've seen people speculate that most likely we are gonna have a wrap up for Morgan's storyline in this first half, and then in the second half of the season we're gonna focus more on the OG Fear characters. I don't know whether that's gonna be the case, but it seems like it, because apparently Lenny James also hasn't been seen on the set of Fear the Walking Dead much in the second half, so there's that. I don't know. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say in regards to the story. It was good, it was impactful, it was memorable. It's the kind of bookend that I was looking forward to in the final season of the main show. And even if it doesn't quite make sense as much to have this episode be a final season episode for Fear the Walking Dead, I'm still glad we got this. So there's that. And I really just want to get through the notes and see if there's anything that I'm forgetting about this episode, so let's just go. So the first thing I've written is, this is the kind of book ending we should have gotten in the final season of the main show. What I just mentioned and what I already talked about. I like bookends like that. I feel like a final season should have that wrapping up your characters feeling that the final season of the main show just didn't really have that. Next thing written is, God, I love me some good old suburban zombie environments. I've missed it. That is in particular in reference to the fact that in this episode we got suburban environments with zombies. Like, weirdly enough, we don't really get much of that. Like, I feel like in Fear the Walking Dead, at least since, at the very least, kind of since season 6, I guess, or at least maybe even as far back as season 3, we haven't seen any, like, more urban environments. Like, people love to joke that The Walking Dead has been just zombies in a forest for a long time, and that's kind of true, but we still have gotten a decent amount of, like, different environments with the zombies. With Fear the Walking Dead, it's mostly been just fucking wasteland for the last couple of seasons. Like, season 5, I didn't really watch, so I don't really know, but it didn't really seem very suburban. It seemed very rural. In season 6, it was very much rural. In episode 7, it was the nuclear wasteland. And in season 8, it's been mostly, again, woods and nature. So it felt very refreshing to be back in, like, a town at the very least. That was really cool to see. Plus, it kind of reminded me a lot of Telltale's The Walking Dead, so that's always a plus. Next thing I've written is, I love the overgrown looks of everything. I don't know how they did it, whether it was CGI, whether it was practical, but they honestly did a really good job making those houses look old and run down and everything. That was some good stuff. Like, I love me just some good post-apocalyptic environments. It always looks so good. It's always so fun to watch. That's one of the reasons why I love post-apocalyptic. Just seeing everything just overgrown and thinking about all the events that have happened in these places over the years in the zombie apocalypse and prior, and the way these places were before the zombie apocalypse started is so fun to think about. That's honestly kind of partially why I've become a writer, like why I want to write my own stories, why I write once in a blue moon a chapter in my story called Dead Inside on Wattpad. It's a zombie story, for those of you who haven't checked it out. It's a Walking Dead inspired zombie story that I've been thinking about and writing for several years, but I just don't really have the time. I focus mostly on my YouTube channel. I just don't really have time to sit down and write new chapters. I've only written, like, I don't know, like 6 or 7 or something. But yeah, the next thing I've written is, that was an awesome fight scene. We haven't gotten a cool fight scene like this in the Walking Dead universe in a while. And I already mentioned it, it was just so satisfying to see the zombies get killed like that. We haven't gotten anything like that in a while. The next thing I've written is, I can't believe they referenced the messed up walkers' faces again. And it was Dwight who mentioned it again, because he was the one who mentioned it back in season 6. So that was really cool. The next thing I've written is, it's the photo albums. What a throwback. In reference to a scene where Mo finds the photo albums of Morgan and his family, which is kind of a non-verbal callback to the first episode of season 1, where Rick and Morgan are talking about what are the chances that Rick's family survived, because they clearly have taken the pictures off of the walls and everything when they left the house, and the reference that Morgan made there, that his family was very much the same, where he was packing survival gear, but his wife was focusing on the photo albums, you know? It's a cool reference, hey, and I really like that. The next thing I've written is, that was a pretty cute scene. I didn't even think about the fact that Mo wouldn't know about kissing. That is in reference to a scene where Morgan talks with Grace about the fact that Grace is apparently sick from radiation and she's gonna die in a year or so, or maybe sooner. And they just kind of proclaim their love for each other and end up kissing. And because Mo has grown up in this child camp, child soldier camp, she hasn't really experienced any of that shit. She doesn't know about normal human interaction, and I really wish they played up that fact about her character more, because it's a kind of an interesting perspective. And I really like that scene, because it's not something that we have seen really before. So I love how she was just kind of confused about why they kissed each other, and she was like, please don't do that ever again. And then Grace ends up kissing her on the forehead, and she clearly likes it. Like, she feels how good it feels to get loved like that. Like, that was a really heartwarming scene. Plus, the music was really good in that scene as well. I've seen people kind of criticize and mock the fact that they seem to have clearly reused the same track that they played for Nick and John Dory's deaths. But they changed it just enough to where I can say it's a little bit different. Like, I consider it a different track, but they clearly were using something similar. It feels like the audio engineers, or whatever you call the people who do the music for an episode, only have like one track in their repertoire and just don't use anything else. Or at least have one notorious track and don't use anything else. And I don't know why. Just create another track, goddammit. But yeah. Next thing I've written is, there is some good zombie violence in this episode. That is in relation to how after that scene that Morgan and Grace just shared, they go out of the house to face Dwight and Sherry and the other Padre soldiers. And as they go out of the door, Morgan, using the gun that was given to him by Rick, shoots a bunch of zombies. And it's just so viscerally satisfying in a way that we haven't just gotten in a long time. Like, that kind of zombie violence, I feel like, has been really toned down. So that was really satisfying. Next thing I've written is Poor Morgan, which is in relation to that scene that I talked about where he has a mental breakdown and the Padre soldiers are ready to kill him. Grace is screaming for him to not get killed, and Dwight and Sherry end up taking out the Padre soldiers. Like, he feels like very despaired and broken at that point, and I just felt sad for him, you know? The next thing I've written is, that was so badass. Also, can Dwight and Sherry stop relating everything to the sanctuary? We get it, you were saviors. So, there's a couple of things here in that line that I've written down. First of all, that was so badass. Obviously, like I said, that's in relation to that whole scene with Morgan just grabbing the gun and putting it to his head, and then pushing it, I believe, as well. And then more Dwight and Sherry taking out the Padre soldiers in the same scene because they don't want to see Morgan die like that. And then afterwards, they once again reference how we can't let you suffer like this because we were saviors. Like, it feels wrong. Like, we get it. Like I said, it makes more sense for them to flip-flop like this in this episode, but stop referencing the fact that you are saviors. We get it. That's what informs all your actions, but maybe you shouldn't participate in any villainous groups who will make you do things like this, and instead just go on your own. Hell, even just leave Morgan to dry. You don't owe him anything. But yeah, the next thing I've written is, Finch is a little badass. I like him. That is in relation to that scene where he takes out the main villain, which I believe she's been taken out like fucking 3 times or something by this point in the season. She's been taken out a few times, and it's just stupid at this point. That was your main villain. She gets taken out like every episode. But yeah, the next thing I've written is something that I already mentioned, which is, what's with Georgia and zombie kids in the attic? Which is a reference to the first season of Telltale's The Walking Dead, which honestly I really want to replay, but I don't really have the time, so I don't know when and if I will replay that game, but we'll see. The next thing I've written is, the way she just appears is kinda creepy. And for a second there I was thinking about, who am I talking about? But I'm pretty sure I'm talking about Morgan's wife. just kind of appearing every time he raises up the gun and looks through the eyesight. It's just kind of creepy because it just feels like she's like a ghost. And after watching the 6th episode of the first season of Tales of the Walking Dead, there might as well be ghosts in the Walking Dead universe. You don't know. So, yeah. Next thing I've written is, did Morgan chain him up? I know there was gonna be something there when he said he doesn't remember. Yeah, that is in relation to how in the earlier scene where he mentions that he doesn't remember coming back to the house after Dwayne got bit. I clearly expected there was going to be some kind of a twist. I didn't know what it was going to be, but it clearly was going to be something, and it turned out to be him chaining up his son in the attic at some point. And the final note that I wrote about this episode is, man, the music in this episode is pretty fucking good, because especially the music, the dramatic music when he ends up going to the attic and sees his zombified son there is like really good. And it's like, maybe there has been some good music in Fear the Walking Dead in the last like 3 seasons that I've been watching, but I haven't really noticed it much. The only time that I've really noticed it is when John Dory died, I guess. And yeah, so for me to notice it like this, it's just really, it means it's really good, and I really, really enjoyed it. Like, this is the first time in a while that I've really been like, wow, I really like the background music. And yeah, I think that's pretty much all I have to say about this episode. Really good, really impactful, really memorable, really developing the characters for their final season and everything, and getting them to where they should be with the wrapping up of their story. Like, this feels like a very satisfying bookend. And I can't wait to see how they kind of leave off Morgan's character, because Lenny James has said that he's probably not going to do anything Walking Dead related ever again. And we still don't know where the characters are going to go in terms of where the show is going to finish, because there's some speculation. Are they going to go to the Commonwealth or anything along those lines? Like, where are the characters going to end up in their finale? So we don't really know yet, but he has said that he's only going to show up again if there's a good story to be told. But I feel like if there's like a cameo for Rick and Morgan to meet up once again, I think he would probably do it. But yeah, I don't know. Still, this is a satisfying bookend for his character, and I really, really enjoyed it. One of my favorite episodes of Fear the Walking Dead and the Walking Dead universe in general in a while. I know I keep saying every time that I've enjoyed an episode or a scene or anything like that it's the best thing in a while, but this is a good episode. Like, it's my favorite episode of anything The Walking Dead since Fear the Walking Dead. It would be since the first episode of season 7, whereas if it's anything The Walking Dead, it would probably be my favorite episode since episode 19 of the main show, or I guess you could say also episode 24 of the final season of the main show, because I did enjoy the finale honestly quite a lot, so there's that as well. And in terms of rating for this episode, I think I'm gonna go with a solid 9 out of 10. It's not quite a 10 out of 10 because there's some nitpicks and some details that are not the same as in the main show, like the visuals of the house. Like, it looks clearly like a smaller house and everything, which doesn't really play too much into the quality of the episode, but are things that bother me about it, that are preventing it from being a perfect episode, and I just have to hold them against the episode. But it's still pretty good, and probably as good as we could have hoped it to be, you know, realistically. I would have been happy with some more excitement in this episode, because it did have a little bit of that, oh, I have to kind of click away and do something else for like 5 minutes because I can't pay attention anymore to this episode, but definitely not as much as I did for episode 3 or episode 1. It just felt a little bit less interesting compared to episode 2, but I still think it's a better episode than episode 2 of this season. But yeah, I am really curious though, what do you guys think about this episode? So comment thoughts down below, and let's have a discussion about this. And also, before we end this video, I just want to give a huge shout out to my currently 5 patrons on Patreon: Omar Ridgman, Deadpool, Corby Dead, Dane Harty, and Peyton Jones. Thank you guys for your support, I really appreciate it, it really means a lot to me. You have decided to support me, you have continued to support me such a long time. Hope you continue to enjoy my content and continue to support me going forward. Thank you very much. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please leave a like, subscribe. Also, check out the link in the description to my Wattpad, where I post my stories, because in addition to doing all these videos on my channel, I'm also a writer. And if you don't enjoy my stories or simply enjoy my videos, you can head over to my Patreon or to my Coffee account, where you can pledge support and help get the channel going, help support me so I can keep writing the stories you enjoy. But if you don't want to do any of that, that's completely fine. You can still help me out in other ways, like liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and especially sharing this video with somebody who you think might enjoy it. And I think it's pretty much it for this video, so hopefully I'm gonna see you in the next one. Bye!